Hello, everyone, and welcome to P&P Live. My name is Susan, and I'm a bookseller in the Children and Teens Department at Politics and Prose. Thank you for joining us and tuning in to this virtual format where we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I have the pleasure of hosting this afternoon's session, and I'm absolutely delighted as we welcome our guest author and illustrator, Angela Joy and Janelle Washington, to tell us more about their new book, Choosing Brave, How Mamie Till-Mobley and Emmitt Till Sparked the Civil Rights Movement. Before we get started, we have some housekeeping notes. Please note that closed captioning is available for today's program. Click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and select Enable Transcript. You can click the link we'll drop in the chat to get your own copy of Choosing Brave. Lastly, if you have a question for our author or illustrator, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. At the end of the presentation, they'll have time to answer some of your questions. You can also upvote the questions you like and want answered. Now, on to the event you're waiting for. Angela Joy is an author, substitute teacher, Girl Scout cookie manager, Japanese gardener, 5th grade book club moderator, and music lover. She lives in Southern California with her husband and 2 children, but will always call Minneapolis home. She has a beautiful and unusual hobby. Along with gardening, she raises monarch butterflies, 67 just last year. Janelle Washington is a self-taught paper cut and silhouette artist from Richmond, Virginia. She graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University with a BFA in fashion design and worked as a children's wear designer for 12 years. While designing, she found an interest in paper cutting after being presented with an opportunity to display other artistic talents during a company show and tell presentation. Creating with paper was quite an exciting concept, and after extensive research, she designed and made her first paper cut. It is my pleasure to turn the event over to Janelle and Angela.
Well, we want to thank everybody for coming out as we wait for Angela. She is going to present and talk about the book some.
Hey, Angela, I think you're
There
muted.
we go. Sorry about that, folks. Can you see my screen, anyone?
We can't see
Is
your
that a no?
No,
Okay,
not
that's
yet.
enough. Okay, let's try again. Always fun with technology. Let's see. So I will just start talking and hopefully we can get it up while I'm talking. My name is Angela Joy. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. I appreciate that very much. So I usually start by talking particularly to parents about how do you start the discussion about Emmitt Till. Now, if you were to ask the typical 4th grader who is their hero from the civil rights movement, typically you're not going to hear Emmitt Till. You're going to hear Martin Luther King Jr., you might hear Ruby Bridges, Thurgood Marshall, maybe if they're particularly aware of African-American history, but you're not going to hear the story of Emmitt and Mamie Till. And there's a reason for that. It is a difficult conversation to have. It's a difficult topic. It's a brutal part of our history. It's ugly. It's certainly not for bedtime. I certainly was hesitant to talk about it with my own children, but when we skate around issues like these, it's my fear that we miss the beauty that can be interlaced. So, for example, in this story of Emmitt and Mamie, by avoiding the topic, we throw away a love story that is just so precious between a mother and a son. We lose the women's history that goes along with Mamie Till-Mobley, how when Rosa Parks sat down in her glory on the bus, she said she couldn't move for thinking of Emmitt Till. And the reason she knew about Emmitt Till was because Mamie had the courage, the bravery to stand up and speak. These are parts of history that I don't want to be lost. Also, it's a common misconception that Martin Luther King started the civil rights movement. But we're learning now in many different ways, many different books, especially picture books, are bringing out some of the female heroes in the civil rights movement. And I think that's important too, that we see that the civil rights movement could not have happened without the women who were standing by, who were preparing the place for Martin Luther King Jr., who were passing out the flyers, who were making the food, who were going to the churches and making the announcements, bringing people together so that there would be a crowd for Martin Luther King, so that there would be people registering to vote. These are the pieces of Black history and women's history that I believe we need our children to see, because they need female examples. And for me, Mamie is one of those examples that as a parent, I will use. My son is the same age as Emmitt was when he was killed, so it's particularly poignant for me right now. But also as a woman, Mamie Till-Mobley was not just the mother who spoke out. She was so much more. And in this book, we talk about that. Earlier, I mentioned that she and Emmitt were very, very close. So close that they were actually more like brother and sister in their conversations with one another. Mamie was so young when she had Emmitt, just 19, a naive 19 at that. So the two of them kind of grew up together. After Emmitt's father was killed overseas, it was up to Mamie to go out and work and support the family. And Mamie's mother took care of Emmitt during the day. So she was kind of mothering both of them while they grew up. By the time Mamie started working in Chicago for the Air Force as a secretary handling, I think she says, secret and confidential files, the only Black woman in the office, she was working long hours, and Emmitt picked up where she left off in the home. He would cook dinner for the two of them. He would clean the house for the two of them. When he needed to clean up, he would go around the house and tidy. And if he was in a hurry, he might sweep some things under the rug so that his mother wouldn't know. But he wanted to do what he could so that when she came home, she didn't have to work. And so that's the kind of team that they were. That's how close they were when he went away to Money, Mississippi, that summer of 1955. And it's the story that gets ugly here, that Emmitt never came back. And so we as humans can imagine what that devastation must have felt like. Surely to lose any child, to lose your only child, to lose your partner. If I were in Mamie's shoes, it would have been something that I don't think I could handle. In Mamie's shoes, I would have curled up into a ball and gone to sleep with him. It's too much to comprehend, but Mamie did something different. And this is what I think we need to share with our young people. She didn't hide away. She put on her big girl pants and she went out and she spoke for her son. Now, this is way before Mothers of the Movement. This is way before the internet and Facebook, and it's way before you even would see Black women on television doing anything. It wasn't a time that many women were on television, but Mamie somehow had the courage to get up there and ask for her son. He was kidnapped, and so nobody knew where he was for 3 days. And this is a woman who went to the mayor of Chicago and said, I need your help. I need you to call down to Mississippi. And he did it. This is a woman who called the head of the NAACP and said, I need your support. And they gave it. And so what motivates this story for me is, where does this strength come from? How does a woman, a Black woman in the 50s, get that kind of strength? That kind of courage, determination, that bravery. that's what we hope to explore in Choosing Brave. This is a story about the hero of what happened to Emmitt Till. Lots of us are familiar with the tragedy, although I will say not many. More and more people are becoming familiar. There are still people who are not familiar with what happened. It's a bit of history that it would be great if we could forget it. But the scary thing is that these kinds of things keep happening. And so this is a story that's being told again and again and again, not to make people weary or drag people down, but to say that this is a history that's been going on for a long time and it's time for it to stop. It's not an isolated issue. It's not something that is 2020. This has been going on for a long time. And this situation takes the temperature. Till, I believe, is coming out soon. The Emmitt Till Anti-Lynching Act is sitting on President Biden's desk right now, waiting to be signed into law. Carolyn Bryant has been in the news, I think in the past few weeks. So the story, because there was no justice, the story lives on. And as long as it's living, as long as it's in the air and the zeitgeist of our children's experiences, I believe that we need to address it. I'm not one to shy away from the discussion, but I wanted people to have a safe, honest, beautiful way to start the conversation of what happened to Emmitt Till, something age appropriate. And that's what we did. We looked at illustrators and found the perfect illustrator for the story. Again, we focus on the hero and not the victim. We examine the strength of this woman and where it came from, the adversity that she suffered before Emmitt's death, and the incredible determination to live a productive life beyond his death. So all of this is included in our book, Choosing Brave. We look at Mamie as not just the mother of Emmitt Till, but as a woman, as a fully realized woman. I think many times mom overshadows the women that we are, and this book attempts to rectify that by showing that Mamie was a friend, a teacher, an administrator, a daughter. Mamie was a secretary, a visionary, and a warrior, a quiet warrior. And I have so much respect for her. So we've written this book with love and respect for Mamie, with hope that this book will serve as a conversation starter of this story because it's so important. We've focused on the age-appropriate nature. So there aren't those initial fears about the exposure to violence and things like that. We've been very, very intentional about making it safe for our young people while still opening the doors to the discussions of what happened then and what is happening again now. So we're going to do a little bit of a reading later, but before we do, I mentioned the illustrations a little bit earlier. The illustrator for Choosing Brave, Janelle Washington, is phenomenal. She is a papercut artist. She will tell you more about that, but I do want to say she was the perfect choice for this book because the nature of her art allows us to see Mamie and Emmitt in the most beautiful, loving way without being graphic. And I think that was so important. The team at Roaring Brook, all of us, were really looking for that piece that would make it safe, but still tell the truth. And Janelle does that beautifully. So I'm going to let Janelle tell a little bit more about her process, her illustrations, and we'll do a little bit of a reading after that. Janelle?
Thank you, Angela. So before I share my screen, I do just want to say I am so grateful to have illustrated this book and to show just how paper lends itself to really illustrate this story beautifully. Some of the tools that I use as a paper cut artist, because a lot of people don't know exactly what a paper cut artist is and what I do. So I'm an artist that uses paper, and I basically cut all of my designs out of paper. I use tools like an X-Acto knife, blades, of course, pencil and eraser, glue. I like this glue particularly because it has a nice little tip that helps keep the glue under control, and scissors, and of course, ruler and a self-healing mat. And I use those things to help cut out my designs. For this particular project and for this story, I really needed to understand how the spread of the pages were going to work out. And so I really had to read the manuscript over and over, really focus on a lot of some of the words that Angela had beautifully written, and some things that I underlined to make sure, what does this mean? Or how can I illustrate this? How can I show this in a way that is powerful and really tells the story without retelling the story through the artwork. So I did a lot of research on Mamie, did a lot of research on Emmitt, the whole areas that they grew up in and lived in, their atmosphere, the landscapes, that kind of thing. Took a lot of pictures from videos, still shots, printed out a lot of pictures. And just really started focusing on Mamie's mannerisms and expressions, how she loved Emmitt, how she looked when she was with her family members, how she looked when she was at the courthouse. So she had a lot of ranges of emotions that she went through. And I needed to really express that through paper, which was a bit of a challenge, but I was able to do it. So I want to show how the start of a paper cut is. So after I do sketches, I did a couple of thumbnails to kind of get myself going. And then I started to kind of flesh out a little more ideas. And then I started to draw them a little bit larger. So I would present those to the art department, the art team, and to Connie, our editor. And once they liked the illustrations that I put together, I would start cutting. So this is an example of one of the illustrations, how it looks in its first form. There's no color to it. This is all one piece of paper. And that's another thing that I really had to focus on throughout with drawing. Everything has to be one sheet of paper. And how does that look? How does the story smoothly go through? And quickly, so this is Mamie now filled in. So I use tissue paper to fill in. My black paper is my paper, and then you have the tissue paper filling in the negative space. And this is what the back looks like. So as you can see, there's some pink there and some blue behind them. What I did was I had to put together a color chart to keep up with who was who. And Mamie and Emmitt, they both have the same brown, but they have some different undertones. So I gave Mamie a more rose undertone and Emmitt kind of more this bluish undertones. And then I have different skin tones throughout the family members. And then throughout the book, you will see red, blue, white, and tan and black. And so those are the most important colors throughout the story. So now I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, I'm sorry. Let's see, share. Huh. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So I wanted to show some of the inspiration photos that I used throughout the book. As Angela had talked about, you have these pictures of Emmitt. I needed to show him as a baby, as a child, being excited, doing things that children do, which is having fun with their cousins. So this is a picture of him on his bike with his cousins. A lot of people have seen this picture, but then I had to translate this picture to work in the story. So instead of adding everyone, I just have Emmitt here on his bike, because it transitioned into this, him getting sick and having to go home. So it made more sense just to have him and then to show him outside and then him and his mother Mamie inside. So that is one photo that I use for inspiration. And then this is another photo, as Angela showed. Everyone knows this picture. You know, it's a beautiful picture of him. He's handsome with his hat on, with this black and white tie and crisp white shirt. You know, I don't know if they were going to church or where they're going, but they look good. And I use this picture in one of the more very kind of sadder parts of the story. This is after Emmitt has passed. Mamie has passed after all that she has done. And I use this photo here of her holding this picture of her child. And when I got to this page, as Angela was saying, like, we had to express the emotions and the horrors without really it being really in your face. And so I had to really think about, how do I express these emotions in a way that everybody can kind of relate to them. In this particular picture, I Googled mothers who had lost their children and looked at different photos. You know, pictures tell so many different stories. And I came across these photos of Trayvon Martin's mother and Eric Garner's mother. And this was in a video, Beyonce did a video, Lemonade, and she used these mothers. And the way they're holding their child, you can see the anger in their face. You can see the sadness in their face. You can feel their emotions. And I use this as an inspiration for that page to show Mamie really reflecting all of these different emotions. You know, she loved this child. Like, I think every mother has several pictures of their children up, you know, in frames. And so I use that as inspiration for that particular page. And then also I Googled chairs, because you want to get the right furniture, you want to get the right background and everything for this story. This is a picture of Mamie reading something, and I really looked at the patterns that were behind her and just tried to pull things that were known to her. You know, like, I don't know if this is her house, I don't know whose home she's in, but this picture shows her, and it shows her that this is somewhere that she is comfortable being in. So I wanted to also reflect these same patterns and the same feelings, as if she's really right there in my paper cuts, because, you know, I want her to feel at home. This is her story that's being told. And then I use myself as a model, because why not? It's easier to, sometimes you have to work on your own emotions. So I took lots of pictures of myself. How would I look holding this picture? Is it vertical? Is it horizontal? Do I have glasses on or no glasses? Because Mamie does wear glasses sometimes. And I had to kind of take couple of pictures, you know, to really get the right feel that I wanted for that particular page. So I use myself as a model. And then this is how it came out. So this is this page where it transitions from outside to inside. You know, we have this outside where there are, people are chanting her name. And then you have this solemn moment of Mamie sitting in the chair, and, you know, she's mourning the loss of her child. She's mourning the injustice that is going on, not only in her life, but throughout the world and her communities. So you can kind of see that is similar how I was sitting. So that was me as a model, but also using, you know, some of the features that I gave Mamie throughout the book to be used there. Also, I use a lot of shadows, silhouettes throughout my work. And that is because we didn't want to focus on the, I guess we would say, villains in the story, but those that were seeking to cause harm, you know, to Mamie and her family. This particular page, this is Mamie going into the courthouse. And outside of the courthouse, there were many people standing around, you know, saying things to her, trying to intimidate her, taking pictures of her. And this is a time where someone would have just said, you know what, I'm out of here. I'm not going into the courtroom. I'm not going to face these people. I'm going to go home. But she continues on. So the best way to show these people intimidating her is through silhouette. And it turned out really beautifully. And these are some of the pictures that I use for influence. So these are some of the actual pictures. This is the sheriff and some of the, not defendants, but those that are accused of killing Emmitt, and also just the reporters that are outside. So as you can see, they're creating their own shadows on the sidewalk. And so I just use that and put them up behind her, kind of like this wall, almost blocking her from her own community and kind of isolating her from everyone else. My use of color, because that red is in the back, I use red for Mamie a lot because it is a color of passion. It's a color of bravery to me. It's a color of love, of fierceness. And so I put it behind Mamie to kind of, it's like propelling her forward, past all these people, to keep going, to keep, keep walking, keep your head up high, just keep going. And so like I said, all of this is one sheet of paper. The black is all connected. And then the white and the red is actual tissue paper. And the brown is a tan paper that everything sits on top of. So this particular page, this is where Mamie is, she starts speaking with the NAACP and traveling with them. And I use this page also for the cover of the book, where the people are looking at her and they're listening intently to what she has to say. And, instead of using silhouettes here, I wanted to actually show the people, because this is her community. These are people that understand her pain and their suffering, because they're also in their own way going through their own pain and suffering. And so that's why I cut each one of these little people's faces out and tried to give them their own characteristics and clothing and, make them different in their own right. And this is where this picture comes from. So this is Mamie, she's talking, and you can see the multitudes of people out there in front of the grocery store listening to her. And it ended up being the cover page with the people behind her. But we changed the way Mamie was positioned to give her more of a forward face. So she's looking at the reader, she's looking at you, and in a way of saying for you also to choose to be brave. And she's wearing all of the colors, the red that represents her, and the blue represents Emmitt. The blue throughout the story, you'll find it's like a bluish green. To me, it represents open spaces, it opens fragility, it represents sadness. Because of these emotions that go with Emmitt. And so I created a rose pattern to be on her, because wherever she goes, she has Emmitt. And wherever she goes, she has her bravery, she has her passion and her courage. And so this is the cover, and just added some more people because it was lots of people listening to her intently. And this is her community backing her also. They're also supporting her and standing with her. And this is also one sheet of paper, even with the words choosing brave, all of those are connected to one black line that holds it all together. And this is the inspiration for that particular page. So I saw Mamie here. I liked how she was standing, very regal, very poised. She's standing with Papa Mose. I think they're in a church somewhere. And I like the way her hands were being held. So as you can see, I used myself as a model to try to get that hand position correct for her. But this is a beautiful picture of her. She looks strong here. And this is the phase that the cover went through. So this is it as one black sheet of paper on top of the tan paper without any color. And then this is me starting to add color to it. So it's starting to get glued down. So I've got to cut these little pieces out and glue them in the right spot and hold my breath and pray I don't mess up, because once it's glued down, that's it. So really just taking my time with this. and then this is the finished piece. Everything really came together beautifully for this story. And then quickly, here's a short video, if it's not too loud, of me cutting.
Okay. 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 Okay.
So yeah, so that is some of my process. That's a quick little video of me cutting a very tiny sign in very tiny letters. So you can see just how much work it takes to get that paper out and to have a really good cut. So those are some of the methods and some of the inspiration that I use in this story. Let's see if I can unshare. Oops, sorry. There we go. So with that, thank you for listening. And with that, we're gonna, Angela is going to do a reading of Choosing Brave now.
Janelle, that's beautiful. Some things I hadn't seen before. Would you do me the kind, can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah, we can see your screen.
I'm going to read this page, and then if you could please share the significance of the illustrations.
Okay.
Okay. It started with a whistle, the kind of whistle white women called rude and white men called profane. It started with a whistle. The story that shifted over time from a forgotten ma'am to something far worse. It started with a whistle. The lie that brought killers to Emmitt's bedroom door. Praise for a smooth checkers move, a poorly timed joke, a workaround for a stuttering boy bragging on bubblegum. It started with a whistle. One breath, one sound, one moment to seal the fate of Emmitt Till. The sheriff set out to dig a grave that day to hide the crime in the mud of Mississippi where no one would see the boy's suffering. But Mamie said no. The land that killed him would not keep him. She had to bring her baby home. At a cost of more than Mamie could earn in a year, the wailing train that carried Emmitt south brought him home again. So I love this page, Janelle. Tell us about the sound.
This was one of the most difficult pages in the entire book because I needed to illustrate racism in a way. You know, this is this thing that actually killed Emmitt. And so I really focused on the sound that he made, this supposed wolf whistle, and started looking up, you know, sound waves. What does this particular sound look like as a sound wave? And so I drew that out from what I could find online of what it actually looks like, and put that there so you could see that this little, you know, this sound is what sent this child to his death. And, you know, I thought that was just powerful on its own, just seeing it, you know, like this is what it is. This isn't like he threw a rock or he had a gun or anything. It is just breath, basically. So I illustrated that as it is. It's pure sense, you know, this, and then connected it to the train, because that connection, now that he has been almost sentenced, he has been sentenced, now his body needs to go home. And so they're connected in a way. And so I wanted to show that movement of the train going on and bringing his body back to his mother. So it really worked well together with both pages. But I mean, it did take me a while to get there because, you know, how do you express this? You know, how do you show this in a way that people can understand it?
Love it. It's perfect. Love it. Love it. I love it here as well. You talked about the red being Mamie's passion. I think of it as the love that she carries with her. But when she sees her son, all of that is drained and she's given it to him. Which I think
Covering
is
him
just,
with her love there. Yeah.
oh, precious, precious. So then quick, going through these pages, here we are, the page you spoke about a little bit earlier. This is the end of the book. It says, in 2003, at the age of 81, Mamie Till-Mobley passed away. Thousands came to celebrate her achievements, to lay a legacy to rest. Yet still today, we whisper her name. For lessons unlearned and hatred still living, we whisper her name. For strength to sow love in spite of our pain, we utter her name. For every son and every daughter who suffered before, we sing her name. For every son and every daughter who suffers still, we cry her name. For justice, for peace, we shout her name. For Emmitt, there is a corner at the end of a long hallway, guarded by monuments and martyrs where a casket lays, left open to remind us of the harder thing that changed everything, and the woman who came to choose it. And Mamie says, let the people see what I have seen. We have averted our eyes for far too long. Everybody needs to know what happened to Emmitt Till. And when we see that Emmitt Till, you can insert any of the names that are there on the right. But the story is still true. The statement is still true. And that's our reading for today.
Wow. Thank you both so much. So we have a lot of comments, almost more than questions, because I think people are just so, you've been so thorough and people have been so moved. But I wanted you to know that, there's a lot of discussion of how moved people are and how much they appreciate the book, and to congratulate you on your book birthday and getting this special, wonderful message out there.
Thank you.
So another one of the questions that's asked is, when you're working on a project like this that is so important and also very, very difficult, how do you care for and nourish yourself so that you can continue doing this kind of work?
Woo, that's a great question. It was tough. We were editing the final portion when Mr. Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, my hometown. And I wasn't nourishing myself. I was not taking care of myself. As I mentioned, is my habit. I just went into my bedroom and I wanted to hide. It was too much to then have to come out and work on this story. But I had to choose brave. I had to use Mamie as an example for modern day Angela Joy, to use the tools that we have to advocate, to protest, to say their names. I'm not a big stand in the front kind of person. I don't make speeches or anything like that, but these books allow me to show my love for my community and my desire for people to come together of all backgrounds and make a better future for our kids. That's why we do what we do. What about you, Janelle? What did you do for your self-care?
Well, I got the manuscript in 2020 and we're like at the height of the pandemic and everything, like the world is just on fire almost. So I really am thankful that the team gave me space. I wasn't locked in a lot of deadlines, because everyone had an understanding that not only is the story difficult, but life right now is hard, but I took many breaks as possible to try to walk away from the story, try to remove myself from all that I was learning, not only about Mamie, but about that time and just the atmosphere. So I went outside. I have a nice little yard that I can sit in and just kind of be one with nature, take in the sunshine. As I said before to Angela, take naps, just to allow my body to shut down and then, go back at it again. So, even in prayer and in meditation, really just, really wanting to give my all to this story. It's just beautifully written. The way Angela's put these words together, I wanted to do it justice. So for me to give it at all, I had to also take care of myself by doing, what I enjoyed. I read other books, I watched a couple of movies, and I just tried my best to relax, when I could. Yeah.
But she really is so inspirational. I mean, writing it was difficult, but now that it's done and stepping back, I'm just in awe at what she was able to do. And I hope that kids feel that awe as well. I hope that kids are inspired to say, bad things can happen, but we can choose to be brave and keep it moving. We can choose to move with dignity and with pride and with purpose beyond what is occurring in the right now. So I think that's really powerful. That is what has kept me going through a few things, actually.
Yeah.
So Katie G was wondering, is there anything that either of you learned during the research process that you didn't end up including in the book?
Oh, so much, so much. I highly recommend the book Death of Innocence by Mr. Benson. His first name is escaping me. But there's so much more to the story that we could not put in. There's just not enough pages. But I think one of the things that was most shocking to me was the death of Emmitt's father. Obviously, that's a whole other chapter of life, but so tragic that Eisenhower ordered him to be killed because of things that happened in Italy. There's, again, too much. But that influenced Emmitt's trial. It influenced the way that Mamie was able to proceed with charges against these gentlemen because Emmitt's father was accused of disorderly conduct. No, what was it called? Janelle? Disorderly conduct?
Yeah, yes, that's what it was, yeah.
So they just assumed that because his father was delinquent, the son must be as well. And so we're not going to go ahead and press charges for kidnapping of these two gentlemen. After they confessed to the crime, the county declined to press charges. And that blew my mind. Lots of little details like that are just fascinating. So Death of Innocence is, if you're at all interested in getting those details, is a great read.
Thank you.
I guess for me, just including more of the family, outside of just Mamie and Emmitt, I didn't illustrate Papa Mose, his cousins, and, her mother, Mamie's mother is shown in there, and father, but they don't have a very strong presence in the story because it's not really about them, but I wasn't able to show her whole family, because this really is just a story about more so about Mamie and her life kind of coming through all of this. But, they're there.
So I have one more question here, which was for Janelle. So do you exclusively make paper cuts now, or do you still design clothing or create other types of art? What's going on?
Well, I got out of fashion a while ago. I have been doing this full time. I've been paper cutting for about 7 to 8 years, and just kind of gaining my voice through paper and really learning the different types of paper and how it can be manipulated to express myself. So this is my medium of choice right now is paper. I like the patience that you need, the amount of detail that you have to put into the artwork to make it, I don't know. For me, I like a lot of detail. So paper gives me that access to do all of that. So I'll be sticking with it for a while.
Good.
Yeah. So I just want you both to know that all of the rest of the comments are just, oh, admiration, but we got to let another question quickly of how much people are appreciating this. So then Erica Harris was wondering, who do you think other than children and educators should be reading this book?
Other than children and educators, I mean, I think everybody should read this book. One of the things I love about picture books, oftentimes people will say, oh, they're just for kids, but picture books are a museum in your hands. There's so much great art out there and in this book. So it's the kind of thing that anyone from any age can approach and appreciate. Again, this is a story that has history that people don't know about. I love a picture book because you can pick it up, get a lot of information quickly, and keep it moving. We've all got such a busy life. But to be able to get a sense of a woman in 32 pages, I think is not only practical and efficient, but it's to have the pictures as well. It's a lovely experience. But then beyond that, there's back matter that has lots of information, timeline. It's got a playlist. I try to include a music playlist in all of my books. And so if you love music, this was music that, well, some of the music, because Mamie's father was a musician, is the jazz of the 1930s, 40s in Chicago, which is great time. Blues and jazz was really hot, developing there, and then it went out to influence the world. So you like music, there's some timeline songs in there. And then I think, Janelle, what else is in the back? You have an author, you have a note, an illustrator's note?
Yeah, I have an author note, but I mean, you got it packed in there with information. I mean, so it's for everybody, you know, to learn something, you know, no matter what age group, you know, like Angela was so diligent in getting that information in there, and you know, that back matter really is like, you know, really meat to the story, you know, just fills in, you know, what the story wasn't able to say. So, you know, it is for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. My approach to writing books is I want to give teachers and educators particularly a one-stop shop class lesson or unit, so that they can go in and, you know, teachers have a million things to do. There's too many kids in every class. There's not enough time. And so they may not get to research as deeply as they might like or intend to because of all the demands on their lives and their time. So with my books, I want to make it easy for them, right, to just pick it up, breeze through, pull up a couple of videos on YouTube, get that playlist going on Apple Music, and you're ready to go. So I guess the same is true for families, but I want to make it easy for folks. There's so much information. It's hard to weed through what's good. So if you can get into that back matter, I think you'll appreciate the resources that are there.
Thank you. Well, we all can't wait to see what comes next, because this was amazing. Thank you all for joining us and for all of your wonderful questions. And thank you again to Angela Joy and Janelle Washington for today's wonderful presentation. We all learned so very much. Don't forget, you can still click the link in the chat box to get your own copy of Choosing Brave. We have many copies waiting for you. As an independent bookstore, we appreciate your support. Also, be sure to check out our website for updating events listings, and you can follow our Children and Teens Department on social